I used to blame the quiet on COVID. Empty halls. Hollow weekends. Too many doors left closed. Freshman year felt like living in a paused world. And I told myself that's why the dorm felt wrong. Now I know better. I stayed because I was broke. Home was 15 minutes away, tucked behind a gas station and a wall of pines, but I wanted the dorm experience. The creaky beds and late-night microwave smell. The bad pop music bleeding through cinder block walls. Most people rented off campus. Couldn't. So I promised myself I'd make the best of it. Friday nights at home. Back by 6 a.m. Mondays. A routine. Clean. Predictable. My roommate messaged first over the summer. Short replies. Pleasant. The kind of girl who never had to say she was used to nicer things. You could hear it in the pauses. When we finally met, she smiled without showing teeth and said, "Last semester everyone had single rooms." Then, softer. "Until you." I laughed like it was a joke. Then I told her my schedule. Fridays I'd leave. Mondays I'd be back before sunrise. She nodded. During the week she stayed with her boyfriend. She said almost nothing to me. We occupied corners. Shared air. That was it. The first weekend, I left my bag by the door so I wouldn't forget. Sunday night, I woke to the sound of semis on the highway near home and thought how different campus always smelled. Bleach and old carpet. I pulled into the lot in darkness. The dorm's motion lights blinked awake as I brushed past them. The hallway hummed. My key turned easily. She was in her bed facing the wall. The room was cool, cold enough that my breath felt like it might show that I didn't have class until 10. I set my phone for an hour and climbed onto my high mattress. I needed a little step stool for the height. A silly thing, white and plastic, that squeaked when I moved it. I remember how heavy my eyelids felt. How my chest loosened in that first drop towards sleep. 10 minutes in. The mattress sighed. Not me. Not a shift of weight. The edge of the bed bowed like something leaned into it. I stilled. The breath left my lungs and hung there. The memory foam held the indent. Then, let go. Like a hand pulled away. I rolled over. She was a pale curve turned toward the wall. A shoulder under blankets. Hair tossed across a pillow. I stared until the screensaver on my laptop shifted colors on the desk. Then I pulled my blanket to my chin and told myself I was too tired to think straight. I slept. Next weekend, I did it all again. Home. Warm food. My mother telling me I looked thin. Monday, 6 a.m. Lights like fish eyes in the hall. Room key. Silence. I climbed up, dropped, and let my bones sink. The room had a smell I'd stopped noticing. A sweet chemical tone from the communal bathrooms down the hall, and the faint rubber of my new shower shoes. I lay on my side and stared at the line where the wall met ceiling, the paint ridge like a seam on skin. The mattress went down. Not the edge, the whole side, like someone sat, like a body's weight pushed in beside my hip. The dip pressed against me. I didn't move. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. The springs, deep under the memory foam, groaned a little. I waited for breath that wasn't mine, for a whisper, for anything. The bed lifted. Then a soft thump. Not on the floor. Off the bed. My bed was high and I used a stool. Whoever had been there hadn't used it. I heard the jump. The landing was quick. Careful. I exhaled into the pillow and tasted cotton and fear. When I finally turned, slow as a clock hand, she was still back facing the concrete block wall. One knee drawn up, blanket tucked. I could see her phone light pulsing under the bed frame like a ghost heartbeat. I told myself again it was nothing, that my mind was chewing on shadows, that memory foam lies. Third Monday, I came in and she wasn't facing the wall anymore. Her head tilted slightly toward my bed, eyes closed. The room's blind was tilted open one rib, letting in a slip of gray morning. Dust floated in it, orbiting. I set my bag down. I didn't even bother with the stool. I climbed up from the desk chair like a kid, careful not to knock anything. I pulled my blanket up, closed my eyes, and counted to 30. The hum from the mini fridge in the corner filled the space between numbers. My own heart stepped on the count. The mattress sank. It wasn't slow this time. It was decisive. The foam swallowed. Weight settled against my side. I kept my eyes famous actor closed, like bad acting might save me. The air felt colder where the weight pulled the covers. A hand touched the back of my neck. Not a grab. A hand. Fingertips first, then the palm, resting like a draft. My skin caught fire beneath it. Every hair along my arms stood up. I stopped breathing so hard it hurt. The pressure didn't increase. No escuece. Just a hold. A quiet claiming. My mind sprinted through every explanation. Sleep paralysis? No, I could feel my fingers in the sheets. A break-in? Impossible. Only 2 keys. A prank? From who? Her? Why? Time burned away. The hand lifted. The bed rose. I listened. Nothing. No stool. No thump. Just the hum of the fridge and my own pulse in my ears like someone knocking from inside. I rolled over fast enough to get dizzy. She was turned to the wall again. Same knee. Same hair. Same dead stillness. And I didn't care if it was rude or crazy or overreaction. I grabbed my phone and my keys and left. I didn't run in the hallway, but my shadow did. I sat in my car and dialed my mother. I told her everything and said it out loud like telling it would break it. But it didn't. When the sun finally broke over the parking lot, she'd already called the school. By noon, I had a new room, a different hall, a different floor, different air. I packed without looking at her bed. They asked if I wanted the police. I said no. What would I say? I was touched by a hand that left no marks? My mother wanted me to. I just wanted to leave. I asked one thing, that she not be assigned another roommate. The housing office woman paused, said she couldn't promise that. I said, please. It hung there. I in the new room. The air felt thin, like the previous space had been padded and this one was raw. I kept hearing that hand. That skin-skin contact in a place where you are supposed to be safe. I unpacked in a fugue and then remembered what I hadn't brought. A book. A binder with a project. Back in that room. She messaged first. Said I'd left things. Come grab them. A smiling emoji. I stalled. I said I needed to focus. That I'd send someone. She pressed. You still have your key, right? Easier if you just swing by. A heart. I went because not going felt like admitting I was afraid, and I had already admitted enough to myself in the dark. The hallway to that room felt longer than before. The door opened with a click like a tongue. She wasn't there. The air was stale. My bed looked like any bed. The stool was tucked neatly in. I picked up the binder, slid the book into my bag, turned to go. She was in the doorway. No sound. No key. Just there, filling it. Eyes bright. Smile flat. Hey, I said soft. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone small. She didn't speak. She shifted her weight, moved one step aside. Enough to let me pass. I did. I could feel her right behind my shoulder. Where's your new room? First floor, I said. Too fast. A lie I'd prepped on the way over because I knew she'd ask. Which hall? The one near the stairs. I earned the stutter. The front stairs or the back? Near the office. I don't remember, I said. I laughed because people laugh when they're lying, and I hated that I did it anyway. She tilted her head like a curious animal. Then she nodded. Once. I left. I didn't run. I wanted to. I held it together until I hit the stairwell, and then I went down fast enough to make the air vibrate. I never saw her again. Later, pieces came back like teeth rising through gums. She had a locked drawer. She'd opened it once to show me. 10 bottles of something, labels turned in. For my skin, she'd said. Then closed it like she was embarrassed. Another time, she said her last roommate didn't last. No reason. Just didn't. Sometimes I convinced myself she was sleepwalking. It's the gentlest thought I can afford. Maybe medication does that. Maybe trauma. Maybe she drifted up and sat beside me and placed a hand to see if I was real. Sometimes I hear my mother's voice instead. Flat with anger. She was seeing how close she could get. She was practicing you. Next time she would have squeezed. I don't know. I only know my neck remembers. That when I wake around 6 a.m., even now, I feel the air shift like someone sitting. I open my eyes and check the door. every time. I picture her in that doorway asking where I sleep. I picture her hand. I picture the way the mattress held her like it knew her already. Like the room did too. And I hope, God, I hope no one ever shared that room with her again. The business building felt like a refrigerator turned down just a notch too far. A stale, scrubbed cold kind of place. The kind where the air bites your throat and the floors squeak clean under your shoes. That's where I went when my laptop decided to cough itself to death the week a monster assignment was due. Second floor lab. Card swipe. Beep. The hinge squeal that always made me wince because the silence swallowed it whole. Past 9 o'clock. The building was a glass box with its lights on, floating in a dead campus. It was never truly dark in there. Just organized dimness. Buzzing tubes overhead, that sound like a mosquito that won't land. I picked a station by the wall so I could see the door. Habit. I set down my flash drive like it mattered. Deep breath. Statistics weighted like a tall mountain that smelled like coffee and panic. For an hour, it was just typing and the warmth of the monitor on my face. Little noises felt huge. The click of the mouse. The fan in the PC tower. The shift of my chair when I leaned back to unknot my spine. A clock somewhere ticked like a nail tapping glass. I kept telling myself midnight and done. Leave by 1. Don't be that person walking home at 2 with a backpack that screams target. At 11:30. Something slammed a door. Not the front entrance's heavy sigh. Somewhere inside. A hard shut that echoed down the throat of the hallway. It ricocheted off lockers and dead hand sanitizer stations and came back to me as a second sound. My blood waking up. I tried out a rational voice. Maybe a janitor. Maybe someone forgot something. Maybe the air system. The rational voice felt small and badly dressed. I kept working. I typed numbers that didn't look like numbers anymore. My eyes went foggy. That's when the footsteps started. If you've ever been alone in a long corridor and heard someone coming, you know how the space changes. Tightens. These were slow, deliberate, heel-to-toe thuds that didn't hurry. The business building felt like a refrigerator turned down just a notch too far. A stale, scrubbed cold kind of place. The kind where the air bites your throat and the floors squeak clean under your shoes. That's where I went when my laptop decided to cough itself to death the week a monster assignment was due. Second floor lab. Card swipe. Beep. The hinge squeal that always made me wince because the silence swallowed it whole. Past 9 o'clock. The building was a glass box with its lights on, floating in a dead campus. It was never truly dark in there. Just organized dimness. Buzzing tubes overhead, that sound like a mosquito that won't land. I picked a station by the wall so I could see the door. Habit. I set down my flash drive like it mattered. Deep breath. Statistics weighted like a tall mountain that smelled like coffee and panic. For an hour, it was just typing and the warmth of the monitor on my face. Little noises felt huge. The click of the mouse. The fan in the PC tower. The shift of my chair when I leaned back to unknot my spine. A clock somewhere ticked like a nail tapping glass. I kept telling myself midnight and done. Leave by 1. Don't be that person walking home at 2 with a backpack that screams target. At 11:30. Something slammed a door. Not the front entrance's heavy sigh. Somewhere inside. A hard shut that echoed down the throat of the hallway. It ricocheted off lockers and dead hand sanitizer stations and came back to me as a second sound. My blood waking up. I tried out a rational voice. Maybe a janitor. Maybe someone forgot something. Maybe the air system. The rational voice felt small and badly dressed. I kept working. I typed numbers that didn't look like numbers anymore. My eyes went foggy. That's when the footsteps started. If you've ever been alone in a long corridor and heard someone coming, you know how the space changes. Tightens. These were slow, deliberate, heel-to-toe thuds that didn't hurry. The fluorescence buzzed like something with teeth. The smell of disinfectant was a physical thing in my throat. My sneakers squeaked with each step like they were telling on me. Stairwell door. Bar push. The metal was cold enough to burn. The stairwell was a concrete throat, the kind of place that makes you understand the word well. Sound fell down it and hit you coming back. I started down and made the mistake of looking up. A man stood on the landing 1 floor above. Not moving. Not hiding. Like I was a movie and he was watching the good part. He wore clothes that used to belong to someone else. Baggy, torn at the cuff. His face was half shadow, but the mouth was visible. Open. Too open. A stare with teeth. My whole body went weightless and then snapped back hard enough to hurt. I took the stairs in a blur. My left foot nearly missed a step. That could have been it. That could have been everything. I slammed into the first floor door with both palms and shouldered through it like fire ate the space behind me. The lobby carpet felt like quicksand. The front doors were glass and automated and opened with a lazy kindness that made me want to scream. I slapped my ID against the plate, and the reader beeped like a microwave finishing popcorn. The doors slid. Inches. Inches again. I pushed through and ran across the empty campus with my backpack bouncing against me and my lungs tearing little holes in my chest. That I didn't look back because some part of me was sure he'd only move if I did. My dorm door closed and clicked, and I sat on the floor with my back pressed to it. Eyes on the gap at the bottom like fingers might slide under. The room smelled like detergent and ramen and safety. I thought about calling campus police and then didn't. I couldn't package what I'd experienced into words calm enough to be believed. Morning made it feel stupid. That warm, forgiving light that makes bad things small. I had to turn in my project. I went back. The building in daylight looked like nothing happened in it. Sunshine made the floors gleam. I laughed under my breath at myself because that's what you do when you're trying to step back into a skin you lost. The lab door opened easily. The air smelled like dust. Fresh dust. I looked up. A ceiling tile was missing above the row where I'd been working. Not broken. Removed. 2 more were set askew in the corner like someone moved them wrong and didn't care to fix it. A gray smear streaked the metal track where tiles sit. The chair I'd used had a fine sprinkle of grit on the back. I wiped my finger across it without thinking and left a clean line. I pictured the sequence. He rattles the handle. Locked. He climbs back up. Crosses the grid. Lowers a tile. Watches a girl who thinks she's alone. Waits for the moment she stands up. Then what? I didn't wait for the answer. I turned in my project and walked straight to the store that sold refurbished laptops and bought one with a keyboard that clacked like a weapon. Back in my dorm, I plugged it in, shut the curtain tight, and told myself I'd never step foot in that building after dark again. I still pass it in daylight. Sometimes the glare on the windows makes the glass look like water. Sometimes I see a shadow move behind the second-floor blinds and I know it's just nothing. Just a trick. But I smell cleaning chemicals and feel the grit under my nails and remember the way the ceiling breathed, like lungs above me. And I walk a little faster. I took the night shift at the storage place off exit 14 because it felt like the kind of job where nothing happens. Empty rows. Fenced perimeter. Cameras watching all the boring angles so you don't have to. It was supposed to be money for my car payment and some quiet hours to think. Until the building started sounding like it was breathing. We closed the gate at 10. After that, it was just me, a bank of monitors, and the long metal corridors, corrugated roll-up doors facing each other like teeth. The air in there always smelled like dust and rubber bands. If you listened hard enough, you could hear the highway humming through the chain link like a distant beehive. Moths found the office light and flattened themselves against the glass like soft, gray coins. The coffee never tasted right after midnight. Like it remembered every burnt pot before it. We had motion sensors every third unit. Thin red lasers across the ceiling. If a door came up, the system chimed, and the camera for that row jumped to the main screen. I'd seen possums set them off. Twice I watched a couple try to use a unit like a hotel room until I knocked on the door with a flashlight and a cough. It was a little after 2 when the alert sounded. Not the usual 2 chime for a door. 3 fast tones. The kind you get when a sensor registers movement inside a sealed space. The ID on the overlay said B27. B27 was the one we stickered the week before. Red tag on the latch. No access. The guy who rented it, Hodges, had a heart attack in a grocery store aisle. His daughter came in, crying and soft-spoken, and said to please freeze the account until she could figure things out. I watched her drive out under the gate with that look people wear when the shape of their life just changed. I stared at the monitor. The camera on row B showed a quiet strip of metal doors and concrete. No shadows. No movement. The little green light under B27's number blinked steady, which meant secure. The motion alert stayed up in the corner anyway. Like a mosquito you can't swat. I walked out to the breezeway. The humidity from the highway crawled into the building and stuck there, a film on your skin. The automatic lights on row B woke up a few at a time, little puddles of white opening ahead of me. Each light buzzed when it turned on, as if clearing its throat. My footsteps clicked hollow against the concrete. I passed B21, B23, B25. The metal doors reflected slivered versions of me, stretched and bent. Halfway down the row, I heard it. A soft, slow drag. Not metal on metal, fabric on concrete. Then quiet. Then that drag again. Closer. I froze. The air in the corridor felt suddenly cooler, as if someone opened a walk-in freezer somewhere and let it leak. There's a thing that happens in the dark when you're alone. Your hearing turns into this raw nerve. Every sound becomes a shape, a meaning. I flicked my flashlight on and swept the beam low. Dust motes moved through the light like minnows. Nothing. B27 sat in the middle of the row. The red security tag we'd put through the latch had been cut. Clean. It lay curled like a snapped worm near the line where the concrete met the door. The padlock was still there. My mouth went dry. The cut ends were smooth, not torn. Someone had used bolt cutters. I reached up like a child and pushed the door with the back of my hand. It didn't budge. The padlock held. But behind the metal I felt it, a tiny give in the door. The kind of flex you get when someone leans against it on the other side. My palm came away cold. Hello? My voice didn't carry right. The space ate it. Storage is closed. Sheriff's office is on the way. A lie. My radio clipped to my shoulder crackled like it wanted to say something and then didn't. Something brushed the inside of the door. It was the faintest whisper of sound. Fingertips across ridged steel. The noise traveled the whole width of the door, left to right, then stopped. My flashlight beam shook. I tried to slow it and made it worse. I knelt and tilted the light to the gap at the floor. A sliver of dark. Concrete. The beam crawled under and hit something white. Not a box. Not a wall. Skin. The pale curve of toes.
Bare.
Close enough that if I put my fingers under, we'd touch. The toes lifted out of the beam like spiders withdrawing. I stood so fast my knee popped. My whole body went to pins and needles. I backed up, slow, the way you do when there's a dog behind a fence and you aren't sure if it's latched right. The lights down the row flickered. I turned and realized the automatic lights behind me weren't waking up anymore. The darkness back there looked thick, like a plugged tunnel. I wanted the radio to work. I tapped it again and all I got was static and my own breath roaring. I pictured telling dispatch, there are feet in a dead man's unit. Send help. I pictured how long it would take. I pictured the time between now and the first blue light. Hey, I said, because I didn't have a better plan. You can't be in there. You need to come out now. I held the master key in my left hand and only then realized how slick with sweat it was. The key slid in the padlock slot and bumped against the pins. My flashlight found the keyway. I turned. The lock clicked open like it had been waiting. I pulled the lock and let it hang from my fingers. For a second I just held the cold weight of it and didn't move. I could hear something inside breathing. Quiet. Controlled. The kind of breathing you do when you don't want the person on the other side of the door to hear it. I hooked my fingers under the handle and lifted. The door came up 6 inches and stopped. A strap on the inside had been looped around something heavy. The metal flexed and groaned against it. The air that gusted out smelled like damp fabric and old cardboard. And something sour. Human. Back up, I said, but it came out like a plea. My light cut a wedge through the gap. A twin mattress lay on its side just inside, braced against the door like a barricade. Behind it, plastic bins, folding chair, a tangle of blankets. A little camp. A voice from deep in the unit said my name. It didn't say it loud. It said it like it had practiced, like it had been waiting to try out the weight of it. Hearing your own name in a stranger's mouth does something to you. It turns your spine into a live wire. I dropped the door. The metal slammed into the concrete and the sound ran down the row like a shock wave. Something on the far end clattered in response, and then I heard footsteps above me. Light ones. Not boots. Across the ceiling. The storage building has crawl spaces over the units, catwalks for wiring and ductwork. I'd never been up there. I pictured someone moving on plywood in a crouch, skittering over me like a big insect. I ran. The corridor behind me decided to play tricks. The lights turned on out of order, creating islands of bright and shadow that felt planned. I hit the breezeway and didn't stop until I slammed the office door and twisted the bolt. My hands shook so hard I had to line up the key with the lock twice. I killed the office lights and dropped into the chair with the monitor wall in front of me. Row B appeared on the center screen. The camera held its same indifferent angle, perfect, centered, betraying nothing. B27's door sat there like a decision I hadn't made. I reached for the radio's PTT and finally got enough signal to cry out a location. Exit 14 storage. Possible trespasser. Possible occupant. Row B. I need. The dispatcher asked me to repeat. I did. The act of breaking the problem into words helped. A little dot on the playback console. I rewound the Row B feed 15 minutes. Hit play. The screen showed me walking in, my flashlight jumping, me crouching by the door. Then, in the corner of the frame, the top line of the roll-up door on B31 flexed. Just a hair. Enough to cast a different shadow for a heartbeat. A shape slid along the exposed rim where the ceiling met the top of the door and then lay flat again. If I hadn't been looking directly at it, I would have missed it. I scrubbed back. Frame by frame. There I was. There was the flex. And there, above me, 2 hands. Pale. Gone as soon as you knew they were there. They never dropped into a picture that showed a person. Just parts. The forearm. Hair falling through a crack like string. Then nothing. The idea that someone can sit above you, inches away while you talk to the dark. It rewired something in me. The deputy pulled in 7 minutes later and made those minutes look like a lie. His cruiser's headlights swept across the building's face and turned every metal door into the same pale coin. He didn't ask me to calm down when I told him. He didn't tell me to breathe. He just nodded like this was something his life had prepared him for. We went back down Row B together. 2 flashlights this time. 2 sets of steps. My heartbeat felt like it lived behind my eyes. At B27, the deputy slid the door up. He did it in one clean motion like he'd been opening these since he could walk. The mattress fell in toward us, then rested against his boot. The unit was a room. A low, bad one. Someone had made a bed in the back with 2 blankets and a foam pad. There was a pile of food wrappers in a grocery bag. A toothbrush in a cup. A half-empty gallon of water that smelled faintly like old plastic. A bucket with a trash bag lining it. A child's keyboard missing 3 keys. No person. The deputy swept left. I swept right. In the far back corner, 3 small holes had been cut in the drywall, each about the size of a shoebox. One led into B29, one into B25, one into B23. The edges of the cuts were smooth. Someone had taken their time with a utility knife, then sanded the edges so they wouldn't snag. He went to B29 first. I opened it from our side like a magician's trick and saw the same nest replicated in the mirror image. A second chair. A stack of newspapers with dates in the margins. A sketchpad with pencil drawings of the row numbers and arrows above them. We followed those holes through 2 more units. The deputy radioed in a second car and kept his voice level. "We've got a warren," he said, like he was naming a weather pattern. "Occupants mobile. Access through multiple breaches." His light found a trail of something dark across the floor. Little crescents. Bare feet leaving sweat marks on dusty concrete. Some small. Some almost child-sized. We reached the last hole and stepped into B33 and everything in me stopped. Taped to the far wall in a neat grid were photographs. Printed on cheap paper. Some color. Some black and white. Not art. Surveillance. It took my eyes a second to recognize their subject, and when I did, the floor felt like a boat under me. Me. Sitting in the office. Me drinking from a red paper cup. Me asleep in the chair with my head tilted back at 3:11 a.m. A photo of my truck parked by the dumpster with a circle drawn around the dent in the bumper. Another of me walking down Row B, taken from behind and above, my flashlight beam a white triangle on the ground. My name was written at the bottom of 3 of them. Block letters. Careful. The deputy's light met mine on the wall and held it there. He didn't touch my shoulder. He didn't need to. We cleared every unit with holes. Nothing alive inside. The second car checked the perimeter and found where the chain link had been cut behind the retention pond. A flap of fence pushed back and wired into a hinge, with weeds grown through it like stitches. Whoever was using our building had routes that weren't ours. Paths that had nothing to do with keys. We were a body they knew the bones of better than we did. They stayed with me until shift change. The morning manager came in with a breakfast sandwich and a look on his face like he wanted to put it back in the bag. We taped cardboard over the holes. We changed the padlocks. We put a note in the log that said no overnight access. Like that meant something to someone who knew the ceiling better than we did. I turned in my key that afternoon. I slept hard for 2 hours. I tell people I almost got kidnapped going to the bathroom and they either laugh because it sounds ridiculous, or they stop laughing because my face won't let them. I was 16. New school. The kind of place that looks expensive because it's new, not because it is. The building was split into neat thirds, nursery, special education, and the high school crammed into what was left. Everything ran on lanyards. Your whole identity dangled off your chest on a plastic square. You needed it to open anything important. Teachers drilled it into us. Don't let strangers tailgate through the doors. Don't hold them open for anyone without a badge. We nodded like good kids. Then life went on. Second week. My second day actually making it through a full schedule because I'd been sick. I had geography all day and drank too much juice at lunch because we weren't allowed drinks in class and I didn't want to leave it at my desk like a sticky time bomb. 20 minutes later my bladder staged a rebellion. I asked to go. The teacher did the Psi teachers have mastered. He let me anyway. The hallways during class felt like an afterthought. Empty carpet. Bright overhead lights. The cafeteria sat open and hollow. Dozens of tables waiting. The big windows throwing rectangles of light across the floor. I passed through it to the bathrooms near a second cluster of classrooms. No one anywhere. The building sounded like the building vents. Faraway air. A printer chirp in a closed office. I washed my hands. The water ran too cold. I dried them under a dryer that blew hot air that smelled faintly like hair. I walked back into the cafeteria and that's when I saw him. A man sitting alone at one of the tables. Older than a student. Not dressed like any teacher I'd met, but not obviously wrong. He wore a lanyard. That mattered. I glanced. The ID card was flipped backward in the holder. Students did that all the time. Teachers, not really. I didn't clock it. Not then. Hey, he said. I yelped because I jump at knives in drawers and balloons and my own reflection sometimes. He smiled and held up his hands a little like he didn't want to scare me. Sorry, he said. Could use a quick hand carrying some work stuff from my car. Won't take long. I said yes before my brain caught up. Because he had a lanyard. Because he sounded like the end of a sentence. Because we're trained to be helpful even when it feels slightly wrong. We walked through the foyer. The front of the school looked out at a low fence and wild shrubbery that pretended to be landscaping. The car park sat just beyond a thick fringe of bushes, hidden until you were on top of it. The automatic glass doors made their slow slide open, and air rolled over us. Chilly, outside air tinged with exhaust. He didn't say anything. His hands kept fidgeting. In pockets. Fingers hooking each other. Teachers usually fill silence. He let it live. My car's the blue one, he said. Boots full of gear. He threw in boot like he wanted me to know he was local or to translate for me. Didn't matter. We turned into the car park. The asphalt still held sunlight heat. I could feel it through the thin soles of my shoes. Blue car. End of the row. As we got closer, I noticed something in the back seat. A shape that didn't look like a bag. Then a second. The glass was tinted enough that my brain argued with my eyes, but my feet knew before the rest of me did. They slowed. The back door opened. Not all the way. Just a slit that became a hand that became a man folding out fast. The man beside me grabbed my arm. His fingers wrapped my upper arm in one snap, like we'd rehearsed and he was nailing it. I didn't think. I tore my arm sideways like a rabbit tearing out of a trap. Something popped inside my shoulder. Pain flared and went white. I ran. I didn't scream because sound takes breath and I needed air to live. Gravel scattered under my steps. The bushes blurred. The automatic doors looked like salvation and failure. Glass that would take its time when I had none. I heard feet behind me at first, heavy, different rhythms, and then I didn't. Either they stopped or my fear turned the world down. The doors opened in inches again. I slid through with a shoulder and hit the foyer floor on the other side. Shoes skidding. I cut left into the cafe that shared space with the library and saw a woman behind the counter who'd sold me bad croissants before. Her face changed when she saw mine. I must have looked like something crawling out of a lake. I told her. Not well. The words came broken, in pieces. Car. Man. Lanyard. Back seat. She came around the counter and put a hand between my shoulder blades and pressed like I was going to fall apart because I was. The office called my parents. And the police. The school had cameras out there like watchful eyes. They rolled back the tape and watched it all in clinical little squares. The men were caught. Charged. One of them held up the lanyard when they were arrested like it would count for something. It had a student's ID in it. Someone had dropped it outside the doors and he'd flipped it to hide the photo. He'd used it to make the scanner flash green and everyone's guard go down. I didn't go back for a while. Couldn't. Even after the shock lifted, even after people said the right things in the right tones, doors didn't feel like doors. Hallways felt like nets. The bathroom felt like a trap you couldn't afford to walk into alone. Therapy gave me better words. Hypervigilance. Somatic memory. Fight, flight, freeze. It also gave me the slow, ugly relief of understanding that fear is not an overreaction. It's a body trying to live. The worst part wasn't the grab. It was how ordinary everything looked while it happened. A school. A man with a badge. A request that sounded like 1,000 others. The trap wasn't a van with no windows. It was normal. Sometimes I see kids holding doors open for adults without badges because it's polite, and I feel something clench under my ribs. I become that person. Let the door close. Make them scan. I watch faces when lanyards flip backward and my stomach tightens. I still go to the bathroom during class when I need to. I walk fast. I keep my eyes up. I listen to footsteps. I replay it sometimes. Late at night. The moment I saw movement behind the glass. I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't. If I'd smiled and nodded and leaned into that car. I don't go far into that thought. I don't let it bloom. I touch my upper arm where his fingers left no bruise but did leave a memory. I remember the pop inside my shoulder when I pulled away and think, good. I broke something getting free. Let it never set quite the same again. I tell this not because I like telling it. I tell it because there are doors everywhere. And sometimes the scariest thing isn't the monster in the dark. It's the stranger in a well-lit room who smiles and says, it won't take long.